Hello and welcome. My name is Lexi and today we're taking a look at the new Armani eye tints. So the Armani eye tint, it's kind of a classic cult product. It's been around in several formulations. They have just reformulated again and they've also added some new colors. I actually stuck with some of the classic neutrals. There are 3 different finishes, so I have one from each finish. And let's start off with some arm swatches, and then we will go ahead. I've got some eye swatches as well as a couple of demos. We'll talk about the products. So we are going to start off with this shade here, which is 18M. The M stands for matte, and this is the shade beige. So this is just one swipe there. And then I'm going to put another swipe here and just kind of buff that out so you can see if you were to kind of buff that onto the eyes, what that would look like. Now, these do dry fairly quickly, so you want to work fast. Do one eye at a time with these. They have a very silky texture, so we'll talk a little bit about that, when we're going through the demos. This one here is number 9, Cold Copper, and this is a metallic. And yeah, this is not a new shade. This shade was around before, I believe. I know Cold Copper was around before. For some reason, though, I always thought it was Gold Copper. So anyway, this is the metallic formula. You can see that there is, it really looks more like a beige metallic, with a little bit of copper. But copper to me brings in more of those like orangey tones, a little bit more like reddish. This is definitely more like yellow beige. And then we have 10 Senso. And this is in the sheer shimmer formula. And this is kind of like your rich, cooler tone chocolate brown, but it really shears out to this beautiful, beautiful soft shimmer. This is my favorite of the 3 I picked up. So we have 18M beige, 9 Cold Copper, no letter after the 9. And then we have 10, which is 10S for Senso. And the S stands for sheer shimmer. So before we talk a little bit more about the new formulation, this is one of the ones from the last formulation. This is shade number 8, Flannel. And this is actually, this color is still available in this new formulation. This is very light, very, very sheer. Honestly, there's not much color with this. Texturally, I would have to say that the new formulation, the old formulation, are pretty similar, and then the packaging on them is exactly the same. So let's talk about a few product details and a little bit more about this. I do have a wear test to share with you as well. So the Armani eye tints, again, they have been reformulated. We have 3.9 milliliters of product, 6 months shelf life, and they're made in France. Those are the exact same specs as the previous formulation. So just something to note, some of the shades are repeat shades. They have been included in this new formula. And then we also have some new shades, and they have some really beautiful, like more daring shades in here as well. So really tempted to get those, but I knew I wouldn't really wear those too often. So I wanted to stick with some neutrals because one of my favorite things to do with these eye tints is to use them more as a base and then pack some like powder or whatever on top, or just, as a quick and easy one and done. So just a little bit about this. According to Armani, they have a 16-hour long-lasting wear. It's an easy to use blendable liquid formula, and it's fallout free. Now, my thoughts on those, 16-hour long lasting wear in how it pertains to like the color being on the lid and everything, I would agree with that, but they're not completely crease proof. At least on me, they are not. So according to Armani, these need no primer, no tools or skills whatsoever. So, I personally, I think they are definitely easy to use. You don't need a primer. You don't need tools. You don't really need skills. I would say that's true. However, even without all of those, I still don't think they are completely crease proof. So you're going to get long wear, but not necessarily long perfect wear. We do have 3 lightweight finishes: the sheer shimmer, the vibrant chromes or the metallics, and the neutral mattes. And according to Armani, these are a mistake-proof, creamy, water-based formula infused with pure color pigments and subtle pearls to boost vibrancy. So overall, I would have to say that I like these Armani eye tints. I think they are a nice product. You're going to get a good day's wear. It's not going to be 100% crease proof, but really, are there any true like liquid or cream shadows that are truly crease proof, especially ones that are not drying? So I haven't found anything that truly never creases. And I would have to say that the creasing on this is not bad. It's minimal. You barely see it. It's definitely something that's not noticeable. So I would definitely feel comfortable wearing this all day long as either an eye base or on its own without other people noticing the creasing. It's really something you have to kind of get up close to see. So, you know, I do think it's a good formula. It's definitely fallout free. It's really easy to use. The texture of these, you know, it's very kind of a silky texture. Almost feels like there's a touch of silicone in it because it's really easy to smooth and blend, which is not always true with liquids or creams on the eyes. You know, a lot of times you can have them like they start drying too quickly, can create clumping, or perhaps the formula is a little bit thicker and to get a nice even coat is a little bit more challenging. That is not the case with these at all. These definitely sheer out absolutely beautifully. They are so easy to use. You can definitely use either a brush or a finger. And as you saw in the first set of demos here, you know, I'm using a brush on one side and finger on the other. My personal preference, I typically prefer brushes, even with liquids, but with these, I do prefer the finger. I just think it's so fast and easy and it just blends out so nicely. So I have to say, texturally, these are probably one of the best textural liquid eyeshadows. We're at the 9-hour mark and I wanted to share with you the wear update. So I never did put on makeup today. I have a sick kid. But anyway, I did eat a very, very spicy dinner where my eyes were watering. When I only touched the corners, but some of the shadow did come off on the tissue with that. And there's some mild creasing going on right now, but it's very, very mild. I think it actually looks pretty good. So let me bring you in. All right, so this is the side that I use my fingers for application. And here is the brush application. So overall, I'd have to say that I think they held up pretty well. So 9 hours of wear with just a little bit of minimal creasing. And you can see if I touch it, you know, there is a trace of shadow that did come off there, but it's not going to be a lot. Everything feels very smooth still, and you can see doing that doesn't really ruin the shadow look or anything. Not that there's much of one today. It's kind of messy. But yeah, overall, I hope that was helpful. So performance-wise, I do think the Violette FR liquid shadows perform just a little bit better on me with creasing. The Lisa Eldridge are probably about on par with these for creasing. And texturally, though, I feel like these are a little bit thinner on the eyes and just a little bit smoother than all of the other formulations. The Chanel formula has been like hit or miss. Certain shades are very smooth and thin, whereas others are a little bit of a thicker formulation, can be a little bit harder to blend out and get that sheer wash of color. So far with the 3 shades I picked from the Armani eye line, those have all been equal. You know, there have been no inconsistencies between the different formulas or the different shades that I picked up. So I think that's definitely a win. However, my favorite liquid shadows are still going to be the Violette FR because I just think that they perform slightly better with longevity than the Armani. But I have to say, you know, I love the way these feel on my lids. So these might be next in line. Yeah, I would have to say the Violette FR for me, then these Armani eye tints, then the Lisa Eldridge. You know, those would kind of be my top 3. So I'd love to know what you think if you've tried this new formulation or the previous formulation. Now, how these compare to the previous one, I would have to say that they are pretty similar to the last formulation, even the one before that. But in my opinion, so I've tried the last, including this one, the last 3 formulations of this. And I would say that you know, it could be, you know, my skin texture changing over the years, but the first one worked a little bit better for me with no creasing. The second one, I had creasing a little bit sooner. This third one is kind of in between the two of them. It's smoother, it's more comfortable than the first one, but the longevity isn't quite as long as it was many years ago. Again, it could be my eyes have gotten a little bit oilier or something, but it's definitely better for me than the previous formulation, which I thought was okay, but I did get creasing a lot sooner with that and it was more noticeable. So I would have to say that, you know, this is definitely an improvement upon the previous formulation. All right, so let's go over a few comparisons. So we did already take a look at these. Just to refresh your memory, this is the new one in 18M, which is the shade beige. We have it in one swipe, and this is it buffed out. You can see it's kind of this warm golden beige shade. Then we have number 9, Cold Copper, which is, you know, it's more of a silvery gold than a copper to me. It's kind of more of like an antique gold with silver mixed into it. So it is a little bit cooler than a traditional gold, but to me, it's not really coppery. And you can see when you buff that out, you see more of those golden tones. So these two are both a little bit warm. This is really neutral leaning warm. It's not quite in the warm category. 18M is going to be warm. And then we have 10 Senso. This is the sheer shimmer. This one is going to be a cool, more of a chocolate brown, and you can see that can really sheer out beautifully. So this is my favorite. All three of these formulas feel very similar on the eyes, and there's no grittiness with any of the sparkle, no issue with creasing between the different formulas. They're very consistent. What you can barely see here is the shade number 8 Flannel from the previous formulation, which I thought was only okay. I think this is definitely a step up. Let's look at a few other comparisons. We're going to start off with Violette FR. So Violette FR, this is the Yeux paint. This is Petite Culotte, and this is one of the matte shades. So she has mattes and she has shimmers. And there's not a huge, you know, color range here. So we're just going to buff out a little bit. You can see that this is, you know, liquid. It's easy to buff out. Color-wise, this is going to be a little bit deeper and warmer than 18M Beige. But this goes on beautifully. It lasts just a little bit better. It truly feels more like paint for the eyes, whereas the Armani has just a little bit more stretch or give to it, almost as though it has silicone in the formula, which, let me just double check that box real quickly. Yes, dimethicone is actually the 7th ingredient in here, so you can definitely kind of feel that difference there, and it makes it really smooth. Now, I did want to show you this Violette FR Yeux paint in, this is Cuivre de l'Aube. And, you know, this is more of what I would expect a copper shade to look like. And you can see how that compares to the Cold Copper, whereas the Violette FR really has more of that orangey copper vibe. And these are her metallics. So you can see when those sheer out, you see a bit more of that shimmer. Whereas when the, you know, Armani sheer out, you really see more of like a pearl, like more of a pearlescence that kind of comes through. You don't see glitter particles, whereas the VLFR, actually, you do see some glitter. So that's going to be a difference between those formulas. And I just wanted to compare those, you know, that was kind of my closest, but this is one more kind of matte beige. This is Tout Doux. I'm actually going to put this right here because it is deeper, but this is just another matte shade, and just wanted to compare that because I think this was one of the first shades that she had that came out. And that's going to be a little bit deeper and warmer than Petite Culotte. And both of those are going to be deeper and warmer than 18M Beige. We're going to take a look at the Jones Road. This is in Barely Pink. We're just going to take a look at this shimmer. This particular formula. I'm going to put this down here. You can see this is the flannel shade kind of buffed out right there. And this is the Jones Road. Now, the Jones Road, these are really going to be more like shimmer for your eyelids. They feel nice going on, but I do find that these are not quite as, they don't sheer out as smoothly. They can be a little bit more patchy than the Armani, and you can see they definitely have a lot of glitter in them, and it's kind of how that glitter, you know, spreads out and disperses when you're smearing it as to, you know, how it kind of looks, because I think the glitter, since sometimes it clumps together a little bit, and that can make it look patchy even though the actual base itself is not. So I think this formula is only okay. It's not a favorite, but I did want to show you how that one performed as well. Texturally though, it feels fine. And then we have Lisa Eldridge here. This is the shade Cressida. This is one of her new shades. And we're going to put this one right down here. This has, you know, a bit of a pearlescent finish to it as well. This dries just slightly faster than the Armani. And I wanted to show you this next to Senso so you can see kind of that pearlescent. They're both kind of similar with the pearlescent vibe. I think, you know, a sheer shimmer and this formula from Lisa Eldridge is going to be fairly similar once you buff those out. But I do find the Armani just gives you just slightly more time to buff. And again, that silicone texture just allows you, at least for me, as somebody who's not great at putting on liquid shadows, it makes it just a little bit easier to get that really smooth, even layer. And just because that's kind of a light shade, let's put this one here next to it. This is Aeneas. And again, this is still Lisa Eldridge, but just so you can see kind of that pearlescent shimmer. This one actually, you can see a little bit more glitter in it, which you can't really tell with the Cressida. Okay. And again, the Senso is more pearlescent than glitter. And last up, this is Chanel. So we have Desert Wind. I have to say the first liquids that Chanel came out with, like this Desert Wind here, we're going to squeeze this one right in here next to Senso because that's kind of a similar color. These ones were really, really great. They've since come out with some other shades, you know, that just weren't as good. They weren't as, you know, certain shades were a little bit more patchy. You know, maybe the formula was a little bit thicker. So they're just not as consistent. So, you know, I do really like this original lineup of the Chanel liquids, and I think those perform really well. And I would say those are pretty much on par with the Armani eye tints. However, the more recent ones from Chanel just haven't really lived up to that. So it kind of took the whole thing down, in my opinion, because you just don't know what you're going to end up getting. And I think that's a shame. So down here at the bottom, we're just going to put one more of the Chanels. This is one of my favorites, and this is 22 Rayon. And you can see this one is really going to be more of a soft metallic shade. And if you compare that to the Cold Copper, you can see Cold Copper is going to be more shimmery, whereas it's truly more metallic with the Chanel. So overall, I have to say I do really like the Armani eye tints. These work really well as shadows. They also work great as liner. And today I used the Cold Copper as a liner. And I think I really like having that kind of that lighter metallic liner on my eyes to kind of like give it a slightly different look and brighten. I think it works really well on the lower lash line as well. So overall, I'd have to say that these are definitely a win. They do only have a 6-month shelf life, and with liquid shadows and things that you are putting near your eyes, you really don't want to stretch that out too long. So yes, I have some of those older Chanel ones, but I'm not wearing those on my lids any longer. They're there for comparison purposes. I really strongly believe that, you know, even if you don't necessarily follow a 6-month timeline, don't mess with your eye health. So don't buy too many of these at once. Definitely, if you are interested in purchasing liquid shadows, just get a few at a time that you're really going to use and then replace them as necessary, because, you know, your eyes are so important. Please do not, you know, risk any infection or anything. So anyway, just my little thing there. But thank you so much for tuning in. I hope this was helpful. I'd love to know your thoughts on the new Armani eye tints. I have to say I'm happy with this new formulation. And after I use these 3 for a while, I may pick up some additional colors perhaps in the fall. So thank you so much for tuning in, and have a wonderful day.